What up, family? Welcome to True Thoughts Podcast with Azu. I am your humble host, Azu, and I am excited to welcome you guys to the side of the internet where we have hard conversations, deep introspection, honest feelings that are raw and unfiltered. Here, y'all, we have authenticity that we've all been looking for. The whole point of this podcast is to uncover truth and build a bridge between all, a bridge of understanding, a bridge of love and empathy and respect. So I want to welcome you guys to my humble abode and a couple of house rules. Let's go over some house rules, man. So the top requirements, the top prerequisites of this conversation and all conversations going forward is empathy and patience. If you don't have that, you don't got that, step outside and come back in. You can get it here, but if you don't got it to give, there ain't nothing wrong with you and nothing being wrong with you being able to admit that. Just step outside and come back in when you're ready. But that's what is the prerequisite of these conversations that we have. We ain't coming here guns blazing. We ain't coming here to attack each other. We ain't coming here for none of that. And of course, if you do so, we're going to handle it with love. But that's not what we're here for. We're not here to berate or demean anybody because we're all humans at the end of the day. And what we are all owed is love. So welcome. I'm glad we went over the house rules. Now let's get into the conversation. The title of episode 1 is Why Do Men Do That? That's what we are talking about today. Why do men do that? And we're going to discuss it with 2 videos that I actually have loaded up. The first video that we're going to discuss is from a podcast that I think her name is Imaza. Hopefully I'm not pronouncing her name wrong. Imaza Farida. It's her and Paul Pierce who will discuss some topics on her podcast, I believe, or it's their podcast. So we're going to discuss that video. And the second video is going to be a video by Tim Ross that we're also going to dissect and analyze and just dialogue about. So yeah, let's get right into the conversation, man. I'm excited and let's get it done.
You know what I noticed? Men don't typically break up with women. They'll do a whole bunch of things to make you break up with them, but they will not leave you. And men also can check out of relationships. I feel like women just think they're the ones that check out. Men check out as well. So make sure that you are tuned in with your man, that you listen to his emotions and you really start to understand him. Because a lot of the times I think women, we work so hard for men to understand us that we forget to understand our man.
All right. So what did she say? She said that men don't typically break up with women. Woo! Ain't that a word? I got to give it to her. She actually spoke the truth about that. And she said that this is something that she noticed. And I appreciate that because it shows that she's actually inspecting the life in which she lives. She's not just living, she's also surveying. And I respect her for that. She said she noticed that men don't typically break up with women. They just do things in which will push that woman towards ending the relationship. She ain't lying. She ain't lying. As a man, I can attest to that. As a man, I can say that I've done that before. I can also say that other men do it because I got friends, right? So there's a lot of corroboration to the story in which she is sharing. And when people do share things about their experience, I think it's important that we affirm their experience. But the reality of what I've realized in life is that a lot of times there's a lot of misunderstandings taking place in our communication, either because of the inability of the speaker or the comprehension of the listener. So with that, that's nobody's fault. That is just something that we simply need to work in tandem, work in collaboration with each other if we truly want to seek understanding. But anyways, let's get back to what she says. I'm going to play short clips of it and then we're going to discuss it. So let's go back again and start from the beginning.
You know what I noticed? Men don't typically break up with women. They'll do a whole bunch of things to make you break up with them, but they will not leave you.
All right, cool. So they'll do a bunch of things, but they won't leave you. Now, what are some reasons? So I got my notes here for y'all. We're going to discuss it. Have conversation, but I want to bring up some of my notes so that way we can get deeper into the discussion. These are some of the notes that I had. Why men don't break up, they make women do it. So one of the reasons why I believe men do that, why we do that, is men don't want to admit that the central premise as to why they were involving themselves with a woman was not because they actually liked her for her. It was simply because she possessed physical qualities that he found satisfactory. I'm going to simply say it like this. It was all about sex for him. It was all about whatever sexual he can do with that woman as to why he started to engage with that woman. It wasn't based off of nothing about her personality, nothing about how she thinks, how she walks, how she talks. Not about that. It was simply because of how her body configuration is made. So I think that's one of the reasons as to why men have a hard time when the dissolvement of that relationship is apparent. That's why that guy's having a hard time ending the relationship, because to end the relationship means that, one, you have to admit, quote unquote, guilt that you were only basing this off of what she could do with you in the bedroom. So you don't want to face that music because you don't want to face the fact that that is very shallow. You don't want to face the fact that that is simply not a good enough reason to engage with a woman. And if you didn't explicitly say that to her prior to engaging with her, that you only simply wanted to have sex with her or kiss her or touch her and do all this other stuff right with her, if you didn't do that, then now you feel at fault and you don't want to face the fault that you should face. And there's a reason, we'll talk about that later, why that man should face that error. He should face that mistake. He should face that bad decision in which he made. So for one, like I said, men don't want to admit that their initial premise as to why they engaged with that woman was because of sex. Second note that I have here is this. Men don't want to own up to the fact that they made a mistake and proceeded in interacting with a woman that they know that they didn't like that. Key word definition, mistake. That's another thing we're going to do in these conversations is simply define words. Use the dictionary to define words so that way, because humans communicate with words, right? So if we don't have a basic level of agreement in how we see a word, it will be very difficult for us to gain understanding in the message and the ideation of our speech. So, mistake. This is the definition of mistake: an action or a judgment that is misguided or wrong. Mistake don't mean that you didn't do it on purpose. I want to be very clear to say that. When someone says that they made a mistake, it doesn't mean that they didn't do it on purpose. It simply means that they were misguided or they were wrong in the judgment that they made. That's very important for us to remember in this conversation. So men don't want to own up to the fact that they made a mistake. Because a lot of men, when they engage with women, they think that, okay, cool, I'm going to get to know her sexually because that's what my first goal is, right? And they think that simply in getting to know her sexually, that means that, okay, those other things, those other qualities in which she possesses, whether it's personal traits, whether it's how she speaks, her intelligence level and things like that, they think the sex will overshadow those things. And the reality is, the sex will never overshadow those things. There's not one thing about a person that can overshadow the things that you deem to be unattractive that they possess. So men don't want to admit that they made a mistake in thinking that those things will be overshadowed by the way her body looks when you take her out her clothes, or by the way that she knows how to do different positions in the bedroom, or she knows how to do stuff too that other women have never done for you or to you. You understand what I'm saying? So that's not how that stuff works. Third thing I have in my notes is, men, we are taught from a young age and witness that women can be fragile. Keyword definition again, fragile, fragility. Fragile means easily broken or damaged. I can attest to this, and I can attest to everything in which I've spoken of and everything I will speak of, that as young boys, we were taught that women cannot handle the truth. We were taught that simply in not even just our engagements with counterparts, like, or non-platonic relationships or in familiar relationships, we were taught that, you know what, if your sister does something or whatever the case is, you can't say this to her because this will hurt her feelings. Now, there's some truth to that do we need to communicate differently with one another? Actually, I want to take that back. I wouldn't say that I think men and women need to communicate differently. I would simply because I believe men and women, before we are men and women, we are a human. You understand what I'm saying? So before our sex is determined, we are humans. And so with that being said, it is imperative that when we communicate with each other, we communicate with the two things in which I mentioned earlier, with empathy and patience. Now, because men don't typically teach other men, like fathers don't typically teach their sons, mothers don't typically teach their sons, because young boys are not taught how to communicate effectively, they don't learn at a young age, and they're simply just told women are fragile or they are soft. You can't do this, you can't do that. And the reality is that's actually doing a disfavor to us as developing men, because we are not taught how to communicate in a way that can be received. So it's not that women are fragile. It's not that women are easily broken or damaged, because they're not. But we are not taught effectively how to get our messages across than simply just telling the boy, you can't say certain things to her because she's a girl. Nah, that ain't it. We got to cut that out pronto. So that's a third reason as to why we're now directing this back to the subtopic of what we're talking about, why men don't break up with women and they just kind of do things to allow the woman to do it. Because that man also is shying away from his inability to be able to communicate in a way in which can be digested well. So men run with the excuse, because I also want to actually, let's be clear on that real quick before we go into that. The difference between an excuse and a reason. A reason is a logical explanation for why something happened, usually accepting responsibility for the outcome. while an excuse is justification used to avoid blame and responsibility. So men typically run with that excuse in which I mentioned because they were not taught how to communicate digestively to women. They think that they can continue to be grown men and say, I wasn't taught how to effectively tell you, hey, I no longer want to be with you anymore. Hey, this no longer works for me. So they use that as an excuse, not a reason, but an excuse. So I'm giving you reasons. Men use excuses. I have used excuses because I also want to be clear. This stuff that I'm telling y'all, I done did it. That's why I'm able to communicate it to y'all. And fourth, let's go over this fourth note. A good amount of women, from our experience, don't handle rejection well. So now this is taking a little bit of responsibility on the man's inability of not being able to communicate digestively to women. And now it's talking about the responsibility of women. In a lot of our experiences as men, because there are some men where they didn't communicate effectively to women when they were younger, but they grow in communication and they learn ways in which to be direct, but also graceful in their directness. There are women where we as men have encountered where we were very direct, we weren't rude, we weren't disrespectful, but those said women still reacted badly, because the reality is just because you do things correctly doesn't mean others are going to do things correctly, right? That's the world that we live in. There are people who live and abide by the law, but that doesn't mean that everybody's going to abide by the law. If the handbook of driving told me to stop at every stop sign, that doesn't mean I'm not going to run into a cop who's going to stop me unjustly when I did stop at the stop sign and harass me. That don't mean that's not going to happen. So going back to what we're talking about, there are men who have communicated effectively to women where they were not rude, they weren't disrespectful, and they did try to get the point across in many ways, but that woman was unwilling to accept that man's decision. You understand what I'm saying? And because of that, men now develop an avoidance, not personality, but they develop an avoidance to addressing such issues with women, because they're like, well, I did what I thought was correct. I did what I knew was graceful and kind, and the woman still is acting a certain way. And that now can produce in some men a response to be like, you know what? Well, no woman can take this. That's why we hear all these generalizations a lot of times, because people from the experience, they're having more negative experiences than positive experiences. And so they say to themselves, all right, well, since this gender group seems to be unreasonable, I'm simply going to treat everyone from that gender a certain way. So in this case, men avoid the conversation because they feel like they've come across enough women to convince them that women won't understand. All right. We've dissected that now. So I've given you some of the reasons as to why, not excusing, because I want to be very clear. A man staking in a relationship that he no longer wants to be in, physically, mentally, emotionally, all the 9 yards, right? A man sticking in that relationship is wrong. Him not gracefully making an exit, him not addressing her directly and simply saying, I no longer want to be in this relationship, that is wrong. So I'm giving you reasons as to why, not excusing any man's behavior in your life or in your future, God forbid, but in your present or in your future, I'm not excusing those guys. What I'm trying to simply give you is reasonings as to why these men may have moved the way that they move, or why they're moving the way that they move currently in your life, right? This is to the ladies. And we already discussed what the difference between a reason and an excuse is. If you didn't, go a little backwards in the video and you'll see where we talked about it. Anyways, so let's dissect the rest of the video.
And men also can check out of relationships. I feel like women just think they're the ones that check out. Men check out as well. So make sure that you are tuned in.
Let's stop it right there. She said men check out of relationships just as much as women. Or she didn't say just as much, but I'm adding the just as much. Men check out of relationships as well. And she believes that women don't think that happens. And I would agree. Lord have mercy. And we're going to get into it in the second topic. Ladies, if nobody ever told you, men check out mentally of relationships. Men check out emotionally out of relationships. They check out. They do. A lot of times we were lied to as kids because we were told that men and women are different. Fundamentally, let me tell you what I like to think, what helps me progress positively with the opposite sex. What helps me progress positively with the opposite sex is that I come from the place that the only difference between myself and a woman is our body parts. That is the only difference. I know some of you guys like to look at science and look at this and that and personal experience to define this stuff for you. I don't do that. I simply say the only difference between me and this woman and I, is that she has things we call boobs and she has a vagina. I got a penis. I don't have boobs. I just have chest. Like, that's what we call a man's chest. We call it chest. The point is, it helps to think of it that way because, as I said before, we are humans before we are anything else. Simply humans. Baseline, we are humans. So if you walk around with that type of perspective, then you will now, once again, come from a better place of understanding when it comes to being able to communicate with the opposite sex. So with that being said, ladies, we check out. Just like how y'all check out, we check out. And what I mean by that is there are things that when men are in relationships with women, if the man communicates to a woman such, and that woman seems to disregard it or she seems to not treat it as a priority, right? His communication. And it doesn't mean perfect communication because we don't all communicate perfectly. You see, just now I just stuttered. It don't mean I don't know words, but I didn't communicate perfectly just now saying that to you guys. With that being said, when a man communicates imperfectly or perfectly to a woman, if that woman disregards that or she simply does not prioritize what that man shared, that can make a man check out. That can make a man check out mentally and emotionally. I want everybody to understand this about life when it comes to interacting with each other, humans. None of this stuff is rocket science. If you simply just allow yourself to be a human, you will be able to understand all of our dynamics. But if you go in there with the mindset of you think you know what you're talking about and your experiences is the best teacher and you know it because your daddy told you and your mommy told you, if you go into the understanding realm between men and women with that mindset, you'll never understand a thing. Sorry for the commercial break. Baby girl came into the crib. Like I said, y'all in my humble abode, man. This ain't no studio. This ain't anything like that. I'm doing it in the crib. So apologize for the quick commercial break, but we are back. Let's get back to the video again so we can analyze the last part of that clip. Okay, so that you listen to his emotions and really try to understand him. This part is imperative. Ladies, unless your man told you that you do an amazing job, and even if he did tell you that, there's always room to get better. But ladies, a lot of women on planet Earth, mothers, sisters, girlfriends, wives, friends, do not do a good job of listening and understanding men's emotions. This goes both ways for both genders, but we talking about men. So please don't do that goes both ways in your mind. Let that go for a second. We are talking about men in this conversation. What is the episode called? Why do men do that? Okay. A lot of women don't do a good job of this. What does it look like to seek and listen to understand a man's emotions? I got the notes for y'all. Practice active listening. Y'all, active listening is continuous, right? Meaning that you don't ever stop listening. Even when you, quote unquote, have the floor and you're responding to him, that don't mean that your listening should stop. And what that means is, how does one listen when one is speaking? It's actually quite possible. And people say that it's not possible, but it's not true. Simply what listening means in this context is that you are actually hearing the root, the heart of what that man is communicating. And it being continuous, meaning like you continually do it. So you need to actively listen. Not listen to respond, like people like to say, but you need to listen to understand. Another note I have is avoid assumption. This part is so hard for y'all. I seen it with my mom, seen it with my wife, seen it with my sister, seen it with my friends. It is so hard for y'all, but I'm not saying this to make y'all feel bad. I'm saying this because y'all really need to understand how this is detrimental to your relationships with men. You don't even got to be a significant other. Stop assuming. Like, stop it. Stop assuming you know what that man meant. Stop assuming you understand what he's saying. Stop it. That's why I say you need to actively listen. People who are active listeners, like I consider myself an active listener because I've had some practice over the years. We are simply talking to understand who we're speaking to. It doesn't mean I do it perfectly all the time because my wife can probably attest to y'all that I don't always do that. So what I'm telling y'all because I've also done it before. But ladies, listen, stop making assumptions when it comes to what your man either means or what he said or your understanding of what he said. Stop that. Because if there's anything more that irritates a man and makes a man want to become silent, is when a woman thinks that she knows what she's talking about. Ain't nobody saying you dumb and ain't nobody saying you stupid. But what you don't know and you can never make claim to is know exactly how I feel. You can have some understanding, but you'll never know exactly how I feel. Just like how that man will never know exactly how you feel, because how many of us can literally express in every single detail how we feel? No, and we don't got time for that. We got bills to pay, we got lives to live, and so forth. So you need to always come from a place of understanding when it comes to that guy. Third thing I have is be patient. Like I said earlier, what's always going to be required in this side of the internet is patience. If you don't got it, sit down. It don't make you any less, but it definitely don't make you any more. If you don't have patience to give to people when you are communicating to them and when you're having dialogue and conversations, just gracefully bow out, because you're going to do more harm with your lack of patience or your impatience than good. So just gracefully bow out and come back when you got it. You know what I'm saying? Ain't nothing wrong with that. I promise you, there's nothing wrong with that. I don't see you any less, and nobody would see you any less if you simply cannot maintain or harness the patience required to understand the human opposite of you. And lastly, educate yourself. This is what I wish for all women. I wish every single woman on planet Earth had a daddy who was honest, not a daddy who's trying to protect, but a daddy who is honest. I mean, because you can protect and also be honest, but a lot of dads don't know how to do that in tandem, so they just know how to protect. A daddy who's honest, a brother who's honest, a male friend who's honest. Like, y'all need as many men in y'all life that will give y'all truth. Another thing I want to say is this. Even though I am sitting here speaking as an advocate for men, that does not mean that everything I say is exactly how another man feels. So if you were to go to your man right now and say, you see what Azu said? You see what Azu said? O-O-I-E? Don't do that to that man, because that man ain't Azu. And Azu ain't that man. Because that's another thing us men hate. We hate when women say things to us like, I ain't never heard no other man tell me this before. Well, it makes sense. Why? Because all these other dudes were trying to have sex with you. So that's why when you're talking about in a romantic relationship, that's why you haven't heard certain things from this guy, because he was just trying to smash. He don't give a damn about giving you any knowledge or feeding you any real game that's actually going to serve you and protect you and actually enlighten you, because he doesn't need you to be enlightened. He needs you to be as dumb as a doorknob so that way he can continue to get that kung mu or whatever it's called. Yeah, that's what he needs. So don't say things to your man like, this man said this or this man said that. Don't ever make it seem like what another man shared is more important than what your man is sharing to you. Don't do that. All right. So yeah, educate yourself. Try to talk to as many men, try to watch as many videos of people who you actually think are not just enlightened, but they are truthful individuals where they're going to give you the raw and unfiltered like we do over here. And utilize that not as the end all be all, but utilize that as education that you can use to further learn on your journey when it comes to communicating with the opposite sex. So we have that. All right. We're going to end the video, I think, after this, and then we're going to move to the second video.
Women, we work so hard for men to understand us that we forget to understand our man.
Yep, that was a great point. Yeah, society tells men to get to know your woman, figure her out, learn her, and all this other stuff, but we don't really ever teach women to learn their man. And sometimes even when we do teach women to learn their man, we say things like, learn how to cook, learn how to clean. There's more to what men want and what men seek out of women than cooking and cleaning. Let's also not minimize women to such not a minuscule, it's an important thing for sure, but let's not minimize the meat of a relationship to cooking and cleaning. You get what I'm saying? All right, second video. Let's get to it, y'all. So this second video, we are going to talk about women versus men cheating. Tim Ross was doing a video where he was talking to a caller who called in and was essentially asking him questions regarding men and women cheating. Let's listen to it and dissect that as well.
In the years that I have done therapy and counseling, most of the women, not all of them, most of the women, when they leave a relationship, their mind leaves first. Their mind leaves first, their body leaves last. When a man, not all, but most men, when they leave a relationship, their body leaves first and their mind leaves last.
Would you agree that cheating is different from men and women? They say that when women cheat, it's more emotional, and like you said, their mind has already left.
Lord have mercy, I disagree with everything this man said. Why do I disagree? Now, he also, I want to be clear, shared that this was his experience. But I always try to share with people that saying things like experience is the best teacher is cap, because experience is not even 25% of the full scope of the truth. Because there are people who are born in atmospheres and environments in which there is no stability, there is no growth, there is no positivity. I don't want to say there is none, but there's a heavy dose of negativity. And that simply can never be the full scope of what life is. That person's experience can't be that. Now, the problem is a lot of us actually choose to exalt our experience over the truth because it's so close to us. Our experience is like something that we hold so dear to our heart. And that can be very dangerous because, like I said, now you create this perception that somehow experience is over truth. And that's another thing over here on this side of the internet. Experience is never going to outride truth. My experience is never going to outride what the truth is. And so we all need to work together to figure out what the truth is. So let's go to what he said. One of the points that I hate, that I've heard a lot of men say, is that women, when they cheat, it is more emotional. I don't know how we got here, but it's not true. It's not true. It's not true. And now somebody may ask, Azu, how you know what it is for women? You're not a woman. You damn right I'm not a woman. However, what I do know is, as I said before, we are humans before we are anything else. So meaning that there are foundations that we all share that makes us a monolith. What is the monolith? Humanity. That's the monolith. And then obviously you can dissect further, and then now it becomes male and female, and then now it becomes adult male, adult female, and adolescent male, and you can keep breaking it down, itemizing it, but we're not doing that. What we are simply saying is that when someone makes the point that women, when they cheat, it's more emotional than when men cheat, I have a problem with that. But let's go back from the top and dissect it.
In the years that I have done therapy and counseling,
When he does therapy and counseling, most of the women, not all of them,
leave a relationship, their mind leaves first. Their mind leaves first, their body leaves last.
all right, so let's stop it right there. He said most of the women, when he's done counseling, in his personal experience, when, it comes to cheating, their mind leaves first and their body leaves last. He said in his experience, though, so we're not going to knock him for what he said his experience is. But what we are going to do is dissect the truth. Listen, y'all, we know that we live in a society in which if a woman is to demonstrate any ability of whore-ish traits or hoish traits or promiscuous traits, we know that in society, I'm talking about across the whole entire world, if a woman demonstrates something like that, she is looked down upon. So we got to look at cause and effect. Now, there's many causes that can create an effect. It's not just one cause, there's many causes. But one of the causes that we're speaking about right now is shame and guilt and defamation that takes place when women move a certain way in a society in which we don't really want them to move. We don't expect them to move. That's where we create notions like this, that when women do this, it's more emotional and their mind left first before their body did. No, I would make the argument that a lot of women are going through that quote unquote procedure of their mind leaving first and their body leaving last only because they don't want to be ridiculed by their body count. They don't want to be ridiculed by the fact that you got so many bodies on you and things like that. That's not so much because they're emotional. It don't got nothing to do with their emotions. And I'm going to say something too that's bewildering to a lot of people. Men and women have the same amount of emotions. Emotions existed before humans existed, right? So with that being said, because that's why we can express an emotion, we have to express it. The human has to express it. The human doesn't come before the emotion. So with that being said, men and women have the same amount of emotions. Men and women just simply display those emotions differently, but we have the same amount of emotions. So we have the same amount, but we just display it differently. What does this look like? What does this mean? This means that women get angry, men get angry. Women may get angry and express it differently than men do. And I actually want to even change that. Each human in each section, they just express how they would like to show their anger differently. But it's not that men have more anger than women. It's not that women have more anger than men. We have the same amount of emotions, we just express it differently. I'm going to say that for the last time. Having said that, women are not just cheating physically because their mind left. No. And he goes on to say that he finds that men, our body goes first before our mind. That's cap. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier too as well. For whatever reason, we've become so desensitized to men's emotions or just obtuse to men's emotions. Men be checking out. They check out. I said it earlier, so I want to say it 1,000 times until y'all get it. Men check out emotionally and mentally too. They do. And a lot of times we hear women say things like, nah, but the guy said that he didn't love that woman that he cheated with. He just wanted to sexually mess with her. The absence of love does not mean a lack of emotion. That's not what that means. So I don't care if the guy said he cheated and he didn't like the girl and he really hated her guts and he only did it because he wanted to get a physical fix. That doesn't mean that he had a lack of emotion in the cheating. And that doesn't mean that he had a lack of emotion that led him to cheating. You see what I'm saying? Because Tim Ross's whole point is that his body left first, then his mind left. That's not true. We disassociate from situations prior to the situation taking place. I'm going to even spell that even more plainly. There were times where I had sex with women where I was not mentally there, but I was completing the action. I wasn't mentally present. I wasn't mentally analyzing what was taking place in that moment, but I was having sex. So what I'm trying to explain is we would be kind of wild to make claims that his body was gone first and then his mind went, no way. Before you do anything physical, your mind has thought it. Like before, there ain't no chance that your body does something before your mind. And even if we just look at science, neuroscience, when we're talking about the neural paths to our brain, to the rest of our body, your brain has to think something before your finger moves. Your brain has to think something before your toes move. That's why something has to happen here before it happens out here, right? And so the point I'm making is we don't realize that all these ideologies and these principles and these narratives that we continue to perpetuate are actually doing us harm. Ladies, I'm going to say it one more time for you. If a man has ever cheated on you, or you know a man has cheated on someone, don't think that just because that man said he didn't care about that woman means that there were no emotions involved in him cheating. And I'm going to spell it out like this as well. His lack of emotion towards that woman, because I would agree, men ain't lying when they say that they don't actually care about the woman that they sleeping with. I didn't care about all of the women I slept with prior to my wife. There was no woman I slept with prior to my wife who I actually gave a damn about. Not one. And that's not because Azu is this terrible person. We sleep with women and we don't give a damn about them. I think y'all know this. Y'all have experienced it. And I'm not saying that to make fun of your experience, but I'm just trying to remind you that that is a thing. Men sleep with women that they don't care about. So men are not lying when they say that. However, a man is lying if he tries to make it seem like, this is all men I'm talking about on planet Earth. A man is lying if he tries to make it seem like there was not an emotion that led him to cheat. That emotion may not be, I also want to be clear about this. If a man cheats, that has nothing to do with the woman that he cheated on. It has nothing to do with her. It has everything to do with him. Meaning, don't guilt yourself for what another person did against you. I'm talking to the women. Don't guilt yourself for what a man did against you. However, that man trying to make it seem like there was no emotion that led him to that is just him simply trying to give an excuse. We read the definition earlier. He's trying to refrain from taking responsibility of his actions by saying that this action should be deemed lesser than because I didn't actually care about the person. If you ask any woman today, does it hurt any less because he didn't care about the woman? He cheated with the woman, but does it hurt you any less because you know he didn't care? No, the pain is still going to be the pain. You don't like the fact that somebody stepped out on you with a person outside of yourself. Yeah, could you make the claim that it feels a little better? Yeah, I mean, it's going to feel a little better, but it's not going to erase the pain that you still were cheated on. It's not going to erase that. So what I'm saying is there are a lot of guys who use that as a point to try to soften the blow and make it seem like, well, I don't like her like I like you. Yeah, nigga, you don't like, not nigga. I'm trying to stop saying that word. You don't like either one of the women, and that's cool. But that's a whole nother conversation. Us men, we can like to have our cake and eat it too. I ain't like that no more, but I have been like that. That's why I said us. So saying that to say, Tim Ross doesn't understand that what he's saying can actually perpetuate something that is negative.